This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Ethiopia says Tigray capital encircled after a surrender ultimatum. Donald Trump agrees to begin power transition to Joe Biden, but vows to continue his legal challenges. And the World Health Organization chief hails progress in COVID-19 vaccine development and calls for equitable access. Welcome to Africa Live on CGTN with me, Beatrice Marshall, in Nairobi. Also ahead on the program. GDP contraction pushes Nigeria into an economic downturn. And the CAF President Ahmed banned for 5 years by FIFA over ethics code violations. We begin with the latest from Ethiopia, where the leader of the northern Ethiopian region of Tigray says his people are, quote, ready to die defending their homeland. He made the declaration on Tuesday, defying Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's ultimatum that the Tigray People's Liberation Front should surrender by November the 25th or face a final assault. The TPLF claims they have also destroyed a unit of the government's armored personnel carriers. The UN says the conflict has already displaced over 40,000 Ethiopians since the conflict erupted nearly 3 weeks ago. Hundreds of people have been killed. While the Ethiopian government has also agreed to make way for humanitarian aid, spokesperson Redwan Hussein says the government, the army and the UN is jointly handling the matter. Addis Ababa also confirms it's in the process of opening humanitarian corridors to reach out to civilians in Tigray. This is after a plea was made by the UN's head, Antonio Guterres, on Friday.
We are planning to have two routes. One, in areas which are actually now unfettered, which are free, those areas could be handled by the government basically. And then with the support of other partners. In areas which are not free yet or going to be free, then there has to be a safer corridor whereby UN agencies and other partners could supply humanitarian items like food and drugs. But we have to identify which route is now safer, whereby the operation is not yet intensified. And then situations might also change in days' time, because in some areas you might have a conflict on one part of the towns and cities, and then on the other time we don't know how the operation would actually move. So we have to know which areas could take us a safe corridor to supply these humanitarian items.
CGTN's Girum Chala is joining us now from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Girum, can you give us an update on the conflict in the Tigray region? What's going on now?
Beatrice, the confrontation between the Ethiopian National Defense Force and Special Force and militia of the Tigray regional leadership is now entering to yet another week. And this time around, it's becoming another level, as the government is claiming that they have controlled almost all parts of Tigray except the strategic location and also the capital city of the regional state, Mekelle city, Beatrice. And as you've said, the Prime Minister has given 72 hours of ultimatum. That hour is now getting lower and lower by the hour. And we have heard that the information that is coming out of the State of Emergency Committee says that using this ultimatum, many militia and special forces of the Tigray regional state are now surrendering their weapons and returning coming out of their barracks and are now giving their hands to the National Defense Force. On the other side, the TPLF is saying that they are inflicting heavy damage on the Ethiopian National Defense Force, and they are still holding important strategic locations and they said they will never bow down for this ultimatum. They will fight until the end. So this is really a tense situation at the moment. In the coming few hours, it might even be heavier than what we have been hearing so far in the conflict.
Well, Kirum, the government said it would now open humanitarian corridors for aid agencies. What update do we have on that?
Well, you've heard Redwan Hussein, the State Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ethiopia. He's also the spokesperson of the State of Emergency in Tigray Regional State. The plan of the government is to open 2 corridors, as he was saying yesterday. One is the places where they are already in control, the Ethiopian National Defense Force, which were taken from the Special Force of the Tigray Regional State. Their people are still affected, and they're trying to provide relief services there. On the other side, in the place where they are not controlled, they are still, trying to open safe humanitarian corridors. Now, the new thing that we have heard is they are working with at least 3 UN organizations. One is the UNHCR itself. It's collaborating with the Ethiopian government to provide food and basic amenities for the affected populations, especially on the other side, the uncontrolled sides of the Tigray regional state. The second one is also the UN OCHA. It's also a relief service trying to provide shelter and food for the people affected. And also the International Committee of Red Cross is also part of this. So these 3 relief organizations are now said to be working with the government and the army to open this humanitarian safe corridor, Beatrice. And in the next perhaps few hours, we should be able to hear some updates. And the Ethiopian government is also vying the return of those people who are in Sudan so that they can be provided with shelter and food. But unfortunately, the continuity of the refugee is also happening at this moment in time.
Kirum Chala joining us there with an update from Addis Ababa. Let's now head to Uganda, where police have said the death toll from last week's violent protests over the arrest of opposition presidential candidate Bobi Wine has risen to 45. Police spokesperson Fred Inanga said 17 people died over the weekend due to injuries sustained in the Wednesday and Thursday protests. He said joint security teams have been hunting for ringleaders who coordinated protests in various parts of the East African country. Uganda's Electoral Commission earlier this month cleared 11 presidential candidates, including incumbent President Yoweri Museveni, to contest in the 2021 general election. Libya's UN-brokered peace talks are set to resume this week. The previous round concluded last week in Tunisia, but without an agreement on a transitional government. The talks between Libya's rival factions aimed to end nearly a decade of civil war. CGTN's Robert Nagila has more.
The Tunis talks held on the 15th of November were between Libya's government of national accord based in Tripoli, the Libyan National Army, which controls much of eastern Libya, and the House of Representatives, based in the eastern city of Tobruk. The sides agreed on December 24, 2021 as the date for elections, but failed to name a transitional administration to lead the country up till then. The Libyan rivals, split between East and West, are set to meet this week online to agree on a mechanism to name the next government. In October, during talks held in Geneva, Switzerland, Libya's warring sides signed an agreement for a permanent ceasefire in all areas of the country. Part of the deal was that all mercenaries and foreign fighters must leave Libya within 3 months. Talks held in Morocco and Egypt in September agreed on the division of leadership positions among Libya's 3 geographical regions. In the latest round of talks, participants reportedly agreed on the scope, duties and powers of the future transition administration to be made up of 3 people, each representing the 3 regions of Libya, and will make decisions unanimously. The 75 participants who attended the talks were selected by the UN to represent different regions of Libya. Robert Nagila, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Let's head to Liberia, where the Electoral Commission has confirmed that a referendum will take place next month. Voters will decide on proposed changes to the country's constitution. Changes include reducing the length of presidential terms and allowing for dual citizenship. The Commission said procedural issues that risked derailing the exercise have been resolved. Liberia's Supreme Court had previously threatened to cancel the referendum after discovering ballots violated the law. The ballots presented multiple referendum questions on the same sheet of paper. In response, the Electoral Commission said questions can be printed on separate sheets of paper. The global number of COVID-19 cases has surpassed 59 million, and the U.S. accounts for a fifth of them, with more than 255,000 Americans dead. And experts fear the coming busy Thanksgiving season could make things even worse. Health services are under unprecedented strain, not just in major cities, but in smaller ones as well. In El Paso, Texas, authorities have had to use portable morgues and implement strict new measures to try to curb the virus spread. Shudeji reports.
It's quite difficult to imagine that El Paso, a small desert city at the Texas border with Mexico, would be hit by COVID-19 this hard. But it's now a raging hotspot. There's almost no capacity left in hospitals due to the surge of COVID-19 patients. Some even have to be transferred to San Antonio, more than 850 kilometers away. Even the convention center has been transformed into a hospital. Not only did the University Medical Center of El Paso adopt a no-visitor policy, but it also set up tents dedicated to treating non-critical COVID-19 patients and keep them separated from the general hospital population. Helicopters regularly arrive carrying patients with severe symptoms to the ER. Local residents tell us these flights take place 4 or 5 times every day. And with a rising death toll, El Paso is running out of morgue space.
We're close to the medical examiner's office of El Paso County, and as you can see, our vision is quite blocked. Why? Because there are some trailers there. Those refrigerated trailers are actually served as mobile morgues. According to the county's official data, there are around 250 bodies already filling those morgues, and they are expecting more, which is why the county has already announced they need more manpower to carry those bodies here.
And here is what we saw behind the fences. Workers carrying bodies from the trailers to the office building. More than 800 people have now died of COVID-19 related issue in El Paso. That's more than 800 stories for loved ones to pass on.
Behind me is one of the drive-in COVID testing site here in El Paso. Since it's by reservation, they have already finished their work. But people who got tested here, they told us they got tested because they want to protect their family, protect their community.
Secretary Banned and his family members came here to get tested. He told us he's lost friends because of the pandemic.
I've been at home in my house for over 30 days.
Wow.
I've been inside my house since October the 23rd. And this is my first day out. I had 3 of my friends die.
3?
3 of them.
That's terrible.
3 of them. Same family. One right after the other. And it's bad news.
Secretary said he wanted to tell anyone who still doubts this virus that COVID-19 is real, that everyone should stay at home to stop the spread and to save loved ones.
It's very important that we don't transmit our germs to somebody else. We're doing this to protect not ourselves, but other people.
More El Pasians do seem to be taking greater action to fight back against the pandemic. But the virus is a strong opponent, and it's already cost this city a heavy price. Xu Dezhi, CGTN, El Paso, Texas.
The World Health Organization is reporting of tremendous progress in research and development of a COVID-19 vaccine. The World Health Organization's Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus says trials provide hope in ending the pandemic.
With the latest positive news from vaccine trials, the light at the end of this long, dark tunnel is growing brighter. There is now real hope that vaccines, in combination with other tried and tested public health measures, will help to end the pandemic.
It's possible that we will have a number of different vaccine candidates that can be used in the fight against this disease, because we would like to provide access to as many efficacious and safe vaccines as possible so we can cover the population around the world. Remember, we have to cover a huge number of people, billions and billions of people. This is unprecedented. And we will need all the manufacturing capacity in the world to be able to do that.
And here is Andrew Wilson with the latest on the vaccine developed by Oxford Vaccine Group.
The results are in, and the Oxford vaccine has lived up to all expectations. The best data came from a regime of half dose followed by full dose, showing 90% efficacy across the age groups, and with accompanying signs that it could limit both disease and transmission.
The higher efficacy regime is better tolerated, and also there's a hint that it may have an impact on asymptomatic infection and therefore possibly transmission of the virus.
All good enough for the Prime Minister, who quickly tweeted the incredibly exciting news that the Oxford vaccine has proved so effective in trials. There are still further safety checks ahead, but these are fantastic results. So, subject to regulatory approval, a programme is now set to start.
Of course, there is a process from now on. It has to be all reviewed. The numbers have to be looked at by the people who are involved in regulation. And then in the UK, I think the next step will probably be something like an emergency use authorization.
Subject to that approval, we hope to be able to start vaccinating next month. The bulk of the vaccine rollout programme will be in January, February, March. And we hope that sometime after Easter, things will be able to start to get back to normal.
Logistically, not a simple task, but the Oxford vaccine is the easiest product so far to transport and produce. And AstraZeneca already has 20 production deals worldwide, including in Russia, Japan, the US and Thailand.
Today, just one of those manufacturers has 100 million doses ready to be used, and that number will grow over the coming months. And the target over the next year is 3 billion doses to be provided for the world.
Here, the NHS will be gearing up to tackle a prioritised immunisation effort, and the World Health Organization will be coordinating international distribution.
The next challenge is going to be to get enough people immunised fast enough to have an impact on the virus. And that does take time. I mean, it simply takes time to manufacture, to get the vaccines distributed, and then to get them into people's arms. It can't just be done overnight.
Even together, the three companies to complete phase 3, AstraZeneca, Moderna and Pfizer, do not have enough capacity to immunise the world's population. More success stories will be needed to follow this one. Andrew Wilson, CGTN, Oxford.
You're watching Africa Live, still ahead on the programme. US President Donald Trump agrees to begin power transition to Joe Biden. And a Turkish court to resume the trial of 20 Saudi officials over the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis,
Syria,
Juba, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
To the United States now, where the Trump administration is agreeing to begin a formal transition to presumptive President-elect Joe Biden. It comes after Michigan officials certified the Democratic candidate the state winner, marking another major setback in Donald Trump's bid to stay in the White House. Sean Caleb's reports from Wilmington, Delaware, Biden's hometown.
I'm standing in front of what has been the transition office for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and certainly today's information that the GSA, the General Services Administration, is going to free up some $6 million to allow the Biden administration to begin the formal process of transition. Now, this is going to be an all-encompassing task that really calls on hiring a number of people, the difficult operation of staffing and funding and operating the White House. But this is a very important step, and certainly one that Donald Trump has been fighting with all his legal challenges going forward. He says those legal challenges will continue, but I want to read you his reaction to the GSA announcement. Of course, coming out in the form of a tweet. He said, "I want to thank Emily Murphy, she is the head of the GSA, at GSA, for her steadfast dedication and loyalty to our country. She has been harassed, threatened, and abused, and I do not want to see this happen to her, her family, or employees of GSA. Our case strongly continues. We will keep up the good fight, and I believe we will prevail. Nevertheless, in the best interest of our country, I am recommending that Emily and her team do what needs to be done with regards to initial protocols, and have told my team to do the same." It's important to also point out that Emily Murphy says she came to this decision on her own and was not directly or indirectly forced or affected by the White House in this decision in any way. Michigan certifying the election, and that is incredibly important as well. It basically means that the 16 electoral delegates needed for the 270 to become the next president of the United States will go to Joe Biden. There was some concern that at least one Republican member on this election committee would try and hold up the process. Trump has challenged the election not only in that state but a number of others as well. Virtually every one of these legal challenges has been overturned, and Trump is digging in his heels. He simply does not want to admit or concede defeat in the 2020 election.
Now, while Trump is allowing the transition process to proceed, he's still hoping it can ultimately be prevented through the courts. His campaign team is looking in particular at the state of Pennsylvania and a judge's decision to reject their claims of widespread fraud in mail-in ballots. It told an appeals court that it never got the chance to properly litigate its claims that the Democrats counted tens of thousands of defective mail-in ballots. Pennsylvania has until Tuesday afternoon to respond to the filing. A Turkish court will resume the trial in absentia of 20 Saudi officials over the gruesome killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Khashoggi was last seen entering the Saudi consulate in Istanbul on October the 2nd, 2018. Riyadh admits Khashoggi was killed inside the mission, but it was not a premeditated murder. Our correspondent Michelle Badavid has more from Istanbul.
This is the second hearing of the trial. The first hearing was taking place before, and now after that, the first hearing, a second indictment was prepared by Turkish prosecutors. Now, already there were 18 Saudi nationals as well as 2 former aides of the Saudi Prince Mohammed bin Salman who had been charged during that indictment. These 2 former aides include Saud al-Qahtani, the former advisor to Mohammed bin Salman, as well as Ahmed al-Asiri, who's the former deputy intelligence chief to the Saudi intelligence officials. Now, they had been charged with incitement of first-degree murder. Both deny these crimes. However, a further 18 Saudi nationals were charged with premeditated murder. Now, according to the second indictment, now that has been added to this hearing, to this trial, 6 more suspects have been added. They include 2 consulate staff. These 2 staff are being charged with taking part of the crime that was committed during that murder. The 4 other suspects have believed to have tampered with the evidence after the crime took place. Now, it's expected that new evidence will be presented during this hearing for this trial, and more witnesses will be heard here in Turkey for this trial as well. Now, regarding the expectations from the trial in general, it's important to, of course, emphasize that this is taking place in absentia of the suspects. So, of course, they will not be facing major consequences here in Turkey because Saudi Arabia has no intention of extraditing the suspects.
Countries in southern Africa are fighting to stop a new wave of locusts, which could jeopardize food security. A similar infestation earlier in the year in East Africa decimated crop and livelihoods. Locust swarms are now threatening farmland in southern Africa. Angelo Coppola has the story.
Initially, Botswana, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe and more recently Angola have reported locust outbreaks.
The type of locust that is affecting them is the African migratory locust. It's a locust whose breeding areas are somewhere in the Okavango Delta in Botswana. So you see, that's why I'm saying they are local. They are not coming from somewhere far. They are not related to the desert locust that we are hearing of in East Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Middle East.
It appears that the African migratory locust is also making its presence felt in South Africa. It's endemic to the country, and like most animals and insects, locusts don't recognize man-made borders.
These types of locusts that we have got a preference for our main staple in Southern Africa, which is maize, of course, also with other cereals like sorghum, millet, and grasses, which our livestock rely on for feed.
The situation isn't critical yet, but the authorities are concerned that it could spiral out of control.
But we are getting worried because the pests seem to be spreading. And with our main planting season starting now, while at the same time the locusts have not been brought under control, that is of concern.
Looking ahead, there are also changing weather patterns. The long-term forecasts suggest that the region could see a La Niña pattern develop. That means lots of rain.
We are likely to get more rains, which is good for our farmers. It's good for recovery of the farmers. But unfortunately, high amounts of rainfall also result in a higher multiplication of the locusts. And so that is of concern.
While it's a different type of locust in the southern African region, it still can cause higher food insecurity for people living here. And there is an important need for people and governments to start working together to solve this problem. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
And staying in South Africa, the shortage of surgical masks at the height of the COVID-19 lockdown led to many people sewing and selling cloth masks from their homes. Cape Town designer Mfo Mopai, who owns a t-shirt line, started producing cloth masks to help fill the gap in the market. He now supplies branded masks to Cape Town Tourism, the city's official tourism organization. Renee Delcam has more.
Clothing designer Mfo Mopai's t-shirt company was one of the small businesses selected to benefit from a mentorship and financial support program by Cape Town Tourism's Board Development Fund in 2019.
He had a fantastic business proposal where he had a t-shirt business that focused a lot on South Africa and Africa. And we loved that about his concept. During lockdown, because the tourism industry had been so badly affected by lockdown, we were checking in with our small businesses and our members just to understand what they were doing, how they were changing their business operations, and what they were doing to survive. And Mfo came to us with a fantastic concept. He said to us, he'll make masks for us. He'll use people in the community to sew these masks and have it branded. And he gave it to us for a very good price.
Mfo says producing these masks gives him a great sense of fulfillment because he is able to create jobs for several people in townships around Cape Town. And it's an opportunity to help promote Cape Town tourism in this difficult time of COVID-19.
For me, it's a blessing. All of these were produced from houses where the cutter would do that and send it to the printer and send it to the printer to the manufacturer. And all of them, they were able to have sustainable income throughout lockdown. Once we got the first order for the masks, we never stopped. We've been working right through.
And just as he does with his t-shirt line, Mfo takes great pride in the quality of the workmanship of his masks.
Our mask is a little bit of has 3 layers, basically. Is the outside fabric, which is printed in an African print. It's made out of what we call woven material, and this has been printed on to give it that effect. And inside, we have what we call lining.
We tested the quality of the masks and everybody loved it. And it's a fantastic branding opportunity for us in the local market, but also in the international market with visitors.
Mpho and his team say they are also extremely proud that their masks could play a part in helping to save the lives of locals and visitors to the city of Cape Town. Renee Dalcom, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Let's now take a look at your business news. Here's what's ahead. GDP contraction pushes Nigeria into an economic downturn. And passenger car sales in Egypt increased by 24% despite the coronavirus impact to business.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Nigeria has slipped into a recession after its gross domestic product contracted for the second consecutive quarter for the first time since 2016. Growth has been fragile and COVID-19 has hit Africa's biggest economy hard amid low oil prices. The continent's top oil producer and exporter relies on crude sales for 90% of foreign exchange earnings. Nigeria normally accounts for an average output of 2 million barrels per day. But the effect of the pandemic and low oil prices have cut production to approximately 1.4 million barrels. The recession 4 years ago was its first in a generation, and the country emerged from it the following year. The South African mining sector has been declining in importance as a contributor to the country's economic growth. In 2018, it contributed $23.2 billion or 7.3% to the GDP, but it remains a significant sector despite the pandemic. CGTN's Angelo Coppola takes a look.
It's estimated in a Boston Consulting Group report that 15 to 25% of South Africa's output would be lost due to the lockdown. But mines are ramping up production.
It's a case of now trying to get as close to 100% or something mirroring full capacity by year end or the first quarter of next year. And so I think that's the big challenge, is doing it in a way that's safe but still efficient.
The regulatory environment remains a challenge in the mining sector. It's been dealt with generally. The challenge is the artisanal and small-scale mining sector, but policies are being put in place there.
We already had it work in terms of preparatory work. As policies developed, we're working on the ground. If we're not at each other's throat with the mining industry, with labor, work together, we can do much better.
Turning to the bigger players, the listed South African mining sector is diverse, from precious metals to coal.
Platinum group metals, part of the precious metal sector. Prices there are very strong. They've been very resilient throughout 2020. And as a result of that, the cash flows that those businesses are generating are exceptionally high. That allows those businesses to either pay down debt aggressively to get more generous with shareholders in terms of their dividends or potentially even buybacks, or just to start piling up cash.
The iron ore sector is a case in point and has surprised on the upside despite the hard lockdown. It's been trading at above $120 in the recent past.
Iron ore has remained very strong in 2020. Vale's supply issues have been a big contributor to that. I don't think anyone expected, 12, 18 months ago, I don't think anyone would have predicted it would be that high. And so it's a similar story with the PGM space, where you have very strong prices, very strong earnings and cash flows. And if those iron ore prices hold up, then those shares are very cheap.
You're either a bull or a bear in the mining sector in South Africa. You can't sit on the sidelines here. And with everything now in place, it appears that it might be time to become more bullish. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Passenger car sales in Egypt rose by 24% year-on-year in September, with 17,051 vehicles driving off showroom floors across the country. Authorities there attribute the recent rise in sales volumes to purchases which were postponed due to the outbreak of the pandemic. CGTN's Yasser Hakim has the details.
The COVID-19-induced lockdown and curfews pushed the Egyptian car market into a standstill from March to June. However, there's been a gradual sales growth since then, after buyers shrugged off the wait-and-see strategy adopted during the second quarter of the year. Omar Belba, a longtime car dealer in Cairo, says higher demand was expected from the month of September.
First of all, September, October and November, and generally the fourth quarter is usually the high season for sales, because that is when international car producers in Europe and Far East in particular release their new models every year, and clients wait for that period to buy the new model of the year. Let's say sales have also improved because cars have become a necessity product in Egypt and not just a luxury. People need cars because of the expansions in the cities, the new highways and roads, while the transportation system is still not fully developed to cover the growing population.
During periods of recession, prices of vehicles usually fall, but not this time. It has actually shot up recently despite the outbreak of the pandemic, as consumers adopt measures to coexist with the virus.
More than 50% of the vehicle plants worldwide have stopped production because of the pandemic. 50% of feeder industries and spare parts producers have stopped work as well. Therefore, production and supply have dropped by 50%, which has led to the acute price increase that we have seen.
Experts, however, have opposing views of how the market will react if the coronavirus pandemic continues for an extended period.
I am optimistic that people are learning to live with the pandemic and adapting to the coronavirus situation. I expect demand will continue to grow, but most clients will target cheaper cars than they had originally wanted.
As long as there is the coronavirus and there is no vaccine to kill it off completely, then all sectors of the economy, especially the car industry, will be negatively affected. It will suffer.
The conflicting views by experts is just a reflection of the uncertainty caused by the coronavirus in every aspect of people's lives. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
In Senegal, the groundnut selling season is set to begin at the end of this month. In the heart of the groundnut basin, farmers are already at work, awaiting the arrival of the first buyers. Ashtatal has more.
Taibanessen is about 240 kilometers south of Dakar. In this region, a local organization which brings together 2,000 farmers is processing groundnuts coming from the fields. On this site, there are 30 semi-industrial units operating at full capacity for the complete processing of the product.
I have grown 3 varieties of groundnuts this year on an area of 20 hectares. I had a good yield because I could harvest 180 tons of groundnuts. We are taking out the seeds step by step.
Before, all the work was done by hand. It was very hard for us. Now, with the help of machines, we do the shelling, sorting and bagging more efficiently. There are 40 people working in each unit. Every day they earn between 10 and 14 US dollars.
According to the Ministry of Agriculture, the harvest is abundant thanks to good rainfall and better preparation than in previous years. A record production of 1,800,000 tons of groundnuts is expected, compared with 1,400,000 tons last year. The government has also decided to set the minimum producer price at around $5 per kilo. Habib Cham is the president of the Groundnut Producers and Exporters Collective. In his opinion, it is important to help farmers to organize better.
We assist them. We provide them with good quality seeds and also good fertilizers. We also offer them differential price. They first only give us back what they have invested. For example, if we give around $10 per produce, they then will reimburse us without interest. It will encourage them to sell us part of their production. And we also organize them to keep a part of their seed to increase the cultivated areas year after year.
At the collection point, Habib Cham manages to gather around 600 tons of groundnuts each day. This allows him to have a considerable stock. Thanks to the signing of an agreement between China and Senegal, most of his groundnuts will be exported to the Chinese market.
We have the chance to access the Chinese market since 2014. I think the producers never had any problems since then, because the Chinese market offers us prices that are attractive compared to the local market.
According to Habib, this has allowed Senegalese producers to improve their standards of living. Astatal, CGTN.
The G20 has said it will strive for fair global access to COVID-19 vaccines. The leaders of the 20 biggest economies have held a two-day virtual meeting in a bid to better coordinate the global response to the pandemic. Hosted by Saudi Arabia, the group has now released a communique. Jacob Greaves has been looking at the details.
The headline-grabbing pledge from this communique is a vow to spare no effort to supply COVID-19 tests, drugs and vaccines fairly and affordable to all people. However, the agreement stops short of mentioning how they will do this and, perhaps more importantly, how much will be spent. The EU had been pushing for $4.5 billion from the G20 to go towards COVID-19 related medical aid for poorer countries, but there's been no mention of that in the final communique. Another announcement from this G20 is the extension of a freeze on debt service payments for poorer countries until mid-2021. The G20 initiative has helped 46 countries defer $5.7 billion in debt payments, but that's short of the 73 countries that were eligible and promised savings of around $12 billion. The G20 has urged private creditors to take part in the initiative. The second day of the summit also saw a climate change discussion. Chinese President Xi Jinping called on the G20 to take a lead when it comes to tackling climate change.
First, we should strengthen our response to climate change. The G20 should continue to take the lead in tackling climate change. We need to follow the guidance of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and push for full and effective implementation of the Paris Agreement. Not long ago, I announced China's initiative to scale up its nationally determined contributions and strive to peak carbon dioxide emissions by 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality by 2060. China will honor its commitment and see the implementation through.
Whilst most leaders outlined efforts to reduce emissions or target carbon neutrality, current US President Donald Trump took aim at the Paris Climate Accord.
To protect American workers, I withdrew the United States from the unfair and one-sided Paris Climate Accord, a very unfair act for the United States. The Paris Accord was not designed to save the environment. It was designed to kill the American economy. I refuse to surrender millions of American jobs and send trillions of American dollars to the world's worst polluters and environmental offenders.
Trump's comments, however, come as the projected winner of this month's US presidential elections, Joe Biden, has pledged to rejoin the international accord. Jacob Greaves, CGTN in Dubai.
And we still have more news for you here in the program. Here's what's ahead. Traditional Ugandan tales come to life through animation.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Technology experts in Uganda are reinventing traditional storytelling. They are digitizing folklore to preserve the age-old culture and make it more attractive to pupils. Makerere University is behind one of these revolutionary moves. Leon Sinyange reports.
Story time is often a captivating moment for children. The traditional Ugandan tales in these books have captured these children's imagination.
They teach about animals, how even teach you about people and their work, even about the communities.
Some of the folk tales are now being brought to life through animation. Richard Musinguzi has been creating and designing a series of animated works.
It's only animation that has the power to bring these stories to life. For example, in one of our stories, Leah, we have a monster that gets stuck on someone's head. You can't do that in real life because in real life there are no monsters. But our ancestors had these imaginations, and animation is the perfect medium.
This is an old fashion. I don't like it. Undo it.
The stories are told in 3 to 7 minute videos, sometimes longer if the tale requires it. Researchers in literature at Uganda's top educational institution, Makerere University, are spearheading the project. They want children to be more engaged in the folk tales. Professor Dominica DPO has spent years writing some of Uganda's folk tales down in a national effort not to lose them. She is also head of the animation project.
We should realize that we are no longer in a context where we can sit around the fireplace as it used to be and hear that elder tell the story. Now the fireplace, as you know, has moved into our living rooms and on the television. So when you are telling this story, you are aware of the space that has changed.
My beloved children.
Each animated story is told from a particular region of the country. And the goal isn't just about preserving known tales. It's also about discovering forgotten ones.
You really realize that the people sometimes you think are the repositories of this knowledge are not really quite there, readily available. It took us quite some time to find people who could tell these stories from beginning to end.
According to the producers of these animated films, the reception to their work has been warm. Currently, only 4 out of 10 written folktales have been animated. And with the rich cultural narratives in Uganda, hopefully many more will be coming to the screens. Leon Sinyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
I can't believe that Dad could lie to us like this. Making such a practical joke on his deathbed.
And let's now take a look at your sports news. Here's what's coming up. CAF President Ahmed banned for 5 years by FIFA over ethics code violations.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
The world governing body FIFA has handed its vice president and the head of the Confederation of African Football, Ahmed Ahmed, a 5-year ban over ethics violations. Ahmed was found guilty by the FIFA Ethics Committee of breaching 4 separate articles of the Ethics Code, including abuse of office, misappropriation of funds, and rules concerning the offering and acceptance of gifts. CGTN's Adel Mahroui tells us the details.
Ahmed Ahmed is guilty. A statement many concerned with African football knew but never dared to speak. On Monday morning, FIFA said it's official. The first man to replace Issa Hayatou in CAF is corrupt.
It's a historic step. We haven't seen the president of CAF or even a senior member convicted that way before. Infantino is apparently applying his motto of no corruption in football. Ahmed Ahmed is out of the CAF elections for sure. He's no longer the head of CAF. He still has the right to appeal. But until the process is over, he will remain out.
For 5 years, the Malagasy will be banned from any football activity. That will force him to resign from heading his country's football association. FIFA's independent ethics committee will fine him more than $240,000. But what about the millions of dollars he has been convicted in wasting? And are there other culprits in CAF?
FIFA's penalties are regulated by the Code of Ethics. They cannot increase the amount of the financial penalty. Definitely, this financial penalty is incomparable. If there were other people involved, I believe they would have been included in the FIFA announcement. But now it's up to Ahmed Ahmed to reveal further names involved with him in the corruption.
The adjudicatory chamber investigating Ahmed has convicted him of breaching his duty of loyalty, offering and accepting gifts or benefits, abusing his position, and misappropriation of funds. He has been also found guilty of managing CAF's tactical steel contract. It replaced Puma's deal for 15,000 sports items worth about $250,000. Tactical, a company owned by Ahmed's friend, got 4 times that amount in return of just 50% more items. It's a historic step for African football and the promise of a better future in CAF, which will be electing a new president within the next few months. Africa is remembering CAF former Secretary General, the late Amr Fahmy, who has blown the whistle and lost his job standing against Ahmed while everyone else remained silent. Adel Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
Over to Nairobi, where the Football Kenya Federation has rolled out a mandatory COVID-19 testing for all clubs taking part in the country's Premier League ahead of the new season. The 2020-2021 FKF Premier League kicks off on Saturday under strict protocols set out by the Ministries of Health and Sport to contain the spread of the coronavirus. These include playing in empty stadia and regular COVID-19 testing for all players and officials. Clubs have hailed the Federation's move to foot COVID-19 testing costs as they welcome the return to action for the first time since the 13th of March when the league was suspended.
I know I speak for all in the football circles here in Kenya that we are very excited football is finally back. This is our work and we're excited to get back on the pitch. We know that testing is a very costly exercise and it would have been very hard for clubs to bear all the cost to test players and staff. So we are very grateful to the Federation for stepping in. We are ready for football and we will follow all the protocols set by the Health Ministry.
More